If you're getting started with Azure Data Studio, this is the video for you. In this video, you'll learn some of the basic features of Azure Data Studio, such as connecting to a database and running a query, and many more of the other helpful features in this tool. If you don't have Azure Data Studio installed, you can get it from the Microsoft website here. I've linked to this page in the description. There's also a box here that says as of SSMS version 18.7, Azure Data Studio is included. The installation is pretty simple. Download the installer file, open it, and follow the steps. I'll assume you have Azure Data Studio installed. When you open it, you'll see this welcome screen. We'll start by creating a connection to the database. To do this, click on the Create a Connection button on the left here. We'll need to provide some information about the database to connect to it. I've got SQL Server running on my laptop, so I'll connect to that. And your connection details will be different if you're connecting to a database at work or on the cloud. For the connection type, you can leave this as Microsoft SQL Server. For the server, this is the name of the server. I can get this value from the connection window in SSMS. The authentication type is Windows Authentication. The database and server group can remain as the default. The name is the name of the connection, which is optional. I'll enter SQL Server Local for my connection. This is all we need to enter here. Click Connect. We are now connected to the SQL Server database. You'll see a summary of the database server here. Let's take a look at what we can do in this tool. On the left of the screen is a panel called Connections. Within this panel, we have an entry called Servers. We can expand this and see a list of the connections we have created. Here is the server we have connected to, which we can tell by the fact it has a green dot on the icon. We can expand this server and see all of the databases on our server. We can expand this further by expanding a database and seeing the objects inside. This works in a similar way to SSMS, where you can browse the different databases and objects. Let's run a query on our database. We open a new query editor by going to File, then New Query, or pressing Ctrl-N. We can see the New Query Editor tab here. There are a few buttons on the toolbar here. We have the Run button to run the query, and Cancel, which will stop a query from running. We can disconnect from the database using this button, and we can change the connection here. This drop-down has the list of databases on our server, so we can change this if we want to run our query on a different database. We'll leave this as the default for now. Let's run a simple query to get the current date. We'll write this Select Get Date query. To run it, we click Run. We can see the results shown here in a new panel, with the current date and time. Let's run another query to get some data from a table. We can write another query here. We'll select all of the columns from our information schema.tables table here, which shows all of the tables in the database. To run this, we click the Run button again. We can see our results here shown in a table. On the Messages panel, we can see a bit of text about the query we just ran, including the time we ran the query, the number of rows, and the execution time. If you're working on a large file or a wide set of results, you may want more room to work with. You can click on the active icon from the list of icons on the left panel, and the side panel will collapse. Click on an icon and it will be expanded. On the left panel, there are a few icons. We'll look at each of them in this video, starting with this one here called Explorer. This will allow you to see a list of files and folders. However, to display this, you'll need to open the folder first. If you have experience with Visual Studio Code, it works in the same way, like many of the features in Azure Data Studio. Click on Open Folder, then browse to a folder that contains the files you want to open. I'll open the folder for my GitHub repository on this computer, called Database Star. Open the folder and click Select Folder. You may be asked if you trust the authors in this folder. You can either click Yes to enable all of the features, or click No to run them in restricted mode. This is my repository, so I'll click Yes. The panel will now display a list of folders and files. You can expand any of the folders to see what's inside. You can click on a file to show a preview of it in the main panel. The preview will be shown in a tab with an italic heading. Or you can double click on it to open the file, which shows the file with a normal heading. When you open the file, you can perform the same actions on it as you can in a new query editor, such as running the script, selecting the database, and more. You'll also see some red underlines in this example. This is because the file has syntax errors. You'll also see the title of the tab shown in red, indicating it has errors. On the right of the screen is a few small red boxes which indicate that there are some syntax errors near the top of the file. In the Files panel on the left, you'll also see this file shown with a red name and a number next to it indicating the number of errors it contains. The containing folder here, sample DB gravity, is also shown in red with a red dot, and the sample databases folder. So there's this kind of automatic syntax checker built into Azure Data Studio, which is pretty handy. When you edit a file, a black dot appears in the title of the tab, indicating it has changed from when it was last saved. When you save the file, the dot will disappear. Another icon on the left panel is Search. We can see two text boxes, a search and replace. This search feature will search through all of the files in the folder that you have opened. For example, I'll search for the text publisher name, which is a name of a column. We can see the results appear here, grouped by file. There are a few thousand results shown, spread over 27 files, so it looks like I've referred to this column a lot. You can click on Open in Editor to view a list of these results in an Editor tab. This makes it easier to look through the results and see more context about each result. Another handy feature in Azure Data Studio is called the Command Palette. You can trigger this by pressing Ctrl-Shift-P or click on the Settings cog on the bottom left and choose Command Palette. This will display the command palette, which is a pop-up with a text box that allows you to find and run different features within Azure Data Studio. It can be a quicker way to find and run something compared to going through the menus. For example, if I wanted to zoom the screen in or out, I could type the word zoom, and several options will appear related to zoom. Azure Data Studio includes several different themes which can change the colours of the application. To view the themes and change them, go to File, Preferences, then Color Icon Theme. A pop-up will appear that looks similar to the command palette that has a list of themes, including several dark mode themes. You can use the up and down arrows to highlight a theme and the application changes to give you a preview. Press Enter to choose a theme. I'll leave it as the default for now. Like any good editor, Azure Data Studio has a range of keyboard shortcuts that can be used. You can find a full list of them by going to the Settings icon and clicking Keyboard Shortcuts. A new tab is opened that contains a list of keyboard shortcuts. You can search for commands, browse through the list, and even change them if you don't like one. You can close this tab by clicking the X here. You can also see the keyboard shortcuts next to a command in the menu for many of the commands. If you see something that shows two commands, like this one to bring up the keyboard shortcuts list that says Ctrl-K, Ctrl-S, it means you need to press one shortcut then the next. So I'll press Ctrl-K and then release K and press S. The keyboard shortcuts appear again. Back on the Connections panel, we have a list of our connections. We can actually group these connections using server groups. This can be helpful if our list gets long or if we connect to other databases or vendors. To add a new server group, click on the New Server Group button. A new panel appears on the right. Enter a server group name and then a group description. Choose a color for the group. Click OK when you're done. The new group is created and shown on the left panel. You can move existing connections into the group by dragging them. The connection is now within the group, and you can collapse and expand the groups as needed. If you need to make the same adjustment to your code in multiple places, you can place multiple cursors. Hold the Alt key and click in each place you want to add a cursor. Release the Alt key when you're done and you'll see multiple cursors. When you type, the letters are added at each cursor. This is great for adding table aliases or other features. You can also have multiple highlights by holding Alt as you select code or double-click on words. This will highlight multiple places, allowing you to modify them at the same time. If you work with SQL for a while, you might find yourself using the same kinds of commands over and over. Some of these commands can be hard to remember, so maybe you have a separate file that has templates for these commands. Azure Data Studio has a great feature to help with this called snippets. A snippet is a templated piece of code that you can use and modify for your own purpose. To use a snippet, type the letters SQL. This will show a list of snippets in the system which all start with SQL. A name and a description is shown. We'll select this Create Stored Procedure one. The code to create a stored procedure is shown. You'll see multiple cursors in the file and the words Stored Procedure Name are highlighted in many places. This means you can start typing the new name of your stored procedure and it is updated in all places. Some snippets have multiple parameters, so you can press Tab and the next set of editable words can be changed. In this example, it's the schema name of DBO, so we can change that if we want. You can play around with different snippets to find those that will be useful to you. One of the icons on the left panel is called Notebooks, which I think is a really handy feature. I'll show you what they are and how they are useful. We can click this and by default we don't see anything. Let's create a new notebook by going to File and then New Notebook. A new tab is opened. It's pretty empty and there's a prompt here to add either code or text. A notebook is a special type of file where you can add text and the code to the same file. It's more than just comments though. Let's see an example. First, we look at this kernel value here. There are a few options, but we're working with SQL, so we leave it as SQL. We can also select a connection. This is because the SQL code we add to a notebook can be executed on a database. So select Change Connection and then select the connection from the list. Click on plus text. Let's add some text. We can add some text into the text box that appears. But it's not just text. We can use Markdown to format this text or select different formatting options here. This can make your file more readable. Let's add some SQL code. To do this, click on the plus cell on the top and select Code cell. Here you can type some SQL. As you enter the code, you'll see line numbers appear, keywords are formatted, and autocomplete is shown. Once you've entered the code, you can run it by hovering over the block and clicking the Run button on the left. The results of the query are shown. You'll see the results, the number of rows shown, and the total execution time. Above the table, you can save the results into different formats and even create a chart. Let's save this notebook. Go to File, then Save. Enter a name for the notebook, choose a location, and then click Save. The name of the tab will be updated. When the notebook is saved, it includes the text you have written, the code that was written, as well as the results of the queries. So it's more than just saving an SQL file. You can include formatted text and results with this file. You can share this notebook file with someone and they can see all of the notes, queries, and data. It's a great way to work with other people and share data. The notebook panel on the left will show a list of notebooks for easy access. It's empty at the moment as we need to specify the folder. Click on the Open Folder button here and the previously opened folder is shown. This is the location where I saved the notebook, so I'll open this folder. I can then see the notebook shown here. As you create more notebooks, you'll see them in the list here. Because Azure Data Studio is built on the VS Code framework, it also includes the concept of extensions. These are extra features you can add to your application to help you with a range of tasks. You can browse the marketplace of extensions and install one or more of them, just like in VS Code. To see the extensions, click on this icon on the left panel. There are two groups on this left panel. The main panel shown here is called Marketplace, and it's a list of many different extensions that are available to be installed. You can browse through the list of available extensions. The blue star on the top left represents an extension recommended by the Azure Data Studio team. Click on an extension to open a new tab with the details of the extension. You can see all kinds of information about the extension here. If you want to install it, click on the Install button here. After a moment, the extension will be installed. It will appear in the Installed tab on the left here. You'll be able to use the features that come with the extension. Just like in Visual Studio Code, Azure Data Studio has built-in GitHub integration. Click on the source control icon on the left panel. This will show a list of files that have been changed in the repository you're working on. For this to show, we need to open a directory that contains a repository. I have my database star repository opened already. We can see two changes here. The first is the new notebook file we created earlier, and the second is the small change we added to the SQL query earlier in this video. We can add a commit message here. Then we can click the tick button here to commit the changes. Next, you can sync your changes by clicking this sync button at the bottom. You may see a message to confirm your action if it's the first time. This will synchronize your local repository with the remote repository, which performs both a git push and a git pull. Alternatively, you can click on the menu here and navigate to the git option you want to perform. If you want to learn how to set up and work with a GitHub repository for your SQL files, you can watch this video. There are a lot of settings available within Azure Data Studio that you can view and change. To see the settings, go to File, then Preferences, then Settings. A new tab is opened. A search tab appears which allows you to search for specific settings. On the left, you can expand the different categories of settings. Browse through the settings to see which ones are available and which ones you may want to change. As you can see, Azure Data Studio is a feature-packed SQL editor and is a pretty good alternative to SQL Server Management Studio. You may want to use it to connect to a cloud-hosted database, such as on Azure, so watch this video next to see the step-by-step process for setting up an SQL Server database on the cloud. Thanks for watching.